is just wildly inappropriate. And yet, I'm really glad you're here.
Your actions were totally inappropriate.
For some reason, he felt that it was inappropriate.
Look into the camera and say something inappropriate.
You don't get personal. That is totally inappropriate behavior.
How inappropriate!
What exactly about my methods are inappropriate?
He tweeted some inappropriate things.
That's a little inappropriate, don't you think?
At what point is it inappropriate?
No, inappropriate. Inappropriate. Stop it right now.
Toby, that is unbelievably inappropriate.
You're vulgar. You're inappropriate.
That's just grossly inappropriate.
Wow, you are so inappropriate.
It's such an inappropriate description.
Inappropriate, but precise.
Oh, you know what's inappropriate?
It's completely inappropriate. Why?
That's inappropriate! That's inexcusable!
Inappropriate things.
Be totally inappropriate.
Inappropriately so.
How very inappropriate. Thank you.
Inappropriate.
It's wildly inappropriate. This is incredibly inappropriate.
This is highly inappropriate.
Okay, this is inappropriate. Grossly inappropriate.
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 Hello, are we live? Can you hear us? If you can hear us, this is the RPGPundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And tonight, it's Inappropriate Characters. And I am joined tonight by our usual cast, Ryan and Venger, and also by a guest that is actually an alumnus of this noble institution. Do you realize it's been 5 years now that we've been doing this? And he was the original third man, Grim Jim.
Hello.
Grim Jim is
the Jimmiest.
That's right. It's a pleasure to have you back here.
Glad to be here.
And
yes, good to have you back.
Yeah, and thanks for coming, because it's like 1 a.m. for you.
Oh, we should, yeah.
No, he used to do this every time, once when he was we were the original 3 inappropriate characters. All right, so Grim, you've been probably up to quite a bit recently, and I don't know how much our viewers know about this, but we're gonna get on to this in a moment. But first, I want to make a programming note, which is that tonight, immediately after this show ends, Diversity and Dragons, our friendly channel of ours, is going to be starting a live stream of their own called the Inappropriate Characters After Party, right? So the idea is, if you want even more similar vein of stuff going on, when you're done watching us, switch over to Diversity and Dragons, and he's going to have a whole other bunch of goofy stuff going on there, relating probably an analysis of this show, I'm guessing. I don't know exactly what's going to go on there, but it should be fun, and there might even be some inappropriate characters there too. So
and then after that, Tucker Carlson is going to be talking about Diversity and Dragons, talking about us.
Probably. That's right, because he's got nothing better to do.
It's going full circle.
Yeah. So, Grim Jim, in the last while, since we've last seen you, you have, aside from whatever, I know you've had a lot of personal drama, but we're not gonna touch on that. But you've been working on some projects, and I think to me, the most notable thing that has been central in terms of RPG stuff is decided very cleverly, obviously, because it's clearly been successful for you, to take up the niche that was vacated by the canceling of Zach S. of doing a weird combination of softcore porn and and live game. So, like, this is something that's not quite to my taste, but apparently it works because you've been doing this topless D&D thing for quite some time, right? Am I being unfair in comparing it to D&D with porn stars, or is that accurate? And what's the deal with all this?
So D&D with porn stars, he just played D&D with porn stars. There wasn't any actual porn.
No.
Whereas we do intermix adult performance with the game.
Oh, really? So you're worse than Zach. That's
so worse than Zach. Yeah.
You're worse than
Yes.
Well, Zach S is going to have to up his game, I guess. I don't know. How do you respond? What kind of arms war is going to develop between the two of you here?
It ain't arms, pundit. It ain't arms.
Other appendages and such.
All right, so
but yeah, so we mix hardcore porn with Broadway.
Okay, all right, and this is on OnlyFans, is that right? Or am I wrong?
No, it's on a site called ePlay.
ePlay, okay.
Which is an adult site that's kind of more dedicated to gaming. Anyway, so people play adult games and stream them on there because obviously you can't do that on YouTube or Twitch or whatever.
I think of myself as a man of the world, as a guy. I like to imagine that I'm fairly sexually libertine, but I never heard of this channel, so that says that this is already in some dingy corner of the internet that I've never come across.
Well, it's never been 100% verified that Pundit isn't a virgin. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's no concrete proof out there that anybody has ever had sex with Pundit. So
I was married for several years. So there is.
I have proof. I have kids. That's my proof that I have had sex.
Sorry, that's
assuming they're yours.
Sex. It's not true.
True. But, yeah, that would be some explaining to do. They're not.
Before we get too far off into left field, what was I going to say? Every time I hear this about it was the same thing. I mean, I'm not trying to pick on you, Grim, because it was the same thing with D&D with porn stars. It reminds me of Seinfeld. It reminds me of that episode of Seinfeld that George Costanza realizes he really loves to eat and he really loves sex, and so he's going to try to combine the two and figure out a way to get to eat while having sex, and it all ends up being, as usual, a mess for George Costanza, right? And this is like the thing to me too, right? I mean, I enjoy titillation, right? I enjoy RPGs. I've never felt the need to cross those two streams. Same thing with pipe smoking. I love pipe smoking. I love sex. I wouldn't be doing both at the same time.
Risky. So it comes from a couple of different places for me. So yeah, I am quite libertine in my attitudes and so on. I've always been interested in sexuality and romance in game worlds more generally, because it's always been kind of weird to me that it's such a huge driver of human behavior in reality. People fight wars, political marriages, they're worried about succession, and the real world is full of porn and sexual marketing and everything else. So this being such a huge driver of human behavior, it only seemed to make sense to me that it would exist within a fantasy world. So I've always been interested in that, and you can see some of that in my earlier, really early comedy work stuff that I was doing for Mongoose Publishing. So for me, this is just a kind of natural outgrowth of that these things should be there. They should exist.
It's always been part of your brand, right? It's always been there, from in everything you've written. So I can recognize that. Yeah. Now, who do you think is like the main audience, though? Like, is it? Are there people? Let me put it this way: are there people who are not gamers at all that come and watch this, or is everybody who watches it gamers, more or less?
So there's, I'd say it's maybe a kind of even third split. So you've got some people who are just there for the porn, and often get frustrated, but weirdly, a lot of people that are into porn do actually like the narrative that goes into it, the story and so on. Kind of draws them in, makes it more meaningful, I guess. You got some people who are there just for the game and the story, and they get weirdly frustrated when the sex stuff happens, which is an odd one. And then you've got kind of tourists, I suppose, who are just curious as to what's happening.
Okay, so how about my co-host here? What is your guys' opinion? Would you mix eating a submarine sandwich while getting a blowjob or not?
There's a name for that, and I just don't know what it is.
Probably German.
I think
what I really mean to ask is, what do you think about what Grim Jim has got going here? I mean, first of all, am I right that it has been successful? Like you've got, because these are paid subscribers that you've got that are doing, right? So it must be okay, right?
All right, well, let me explain a bit more before you ask any more stuff. So we have a site that people can get a membership to, tabletopless.org. We live stream on ePlay regularly, though we're on a hiatus at the moment. People tip during the game, not just to get people naked and doing stuff, but we also let them tip to alter the game. So they can tip to give someone a reroll, and that could be either to the good or to the bad. So, oh no, you're not having that crit. No, you're being defeated. Or more often, they help the girls out with whatever it is that they need to do. So we make money that way, and then I produce supplements and material that we've used in game that I sell as well. So those are our different revenue streams that all come together. It doesn't make a huge amount of money because we seem to have kind of picked the time when the internet was extra hard cracking down on people sharing adult content. And so it's been difficult to grow, but we do have a pretty loyal, hardcore audience. No pun intended.
All right, Ryan, Venger,
I was going to say,
Venger, you're not allowed to watch this Grim show.
Probably not.
What do you guys think about this? Is this within the realm of what is perfectly fine, acceptable, whatever, or is it like something that is profoundly immoral, or is it something in between, like I said, just kind of weird or distasteful?
I don't know, Venger. One thing that Jim said that really, I guess, piqued my interest was you said there are folks that are tuning in purely for the story, right? And they're, I guess, a subgroup of porn aficionados that enjoy the story. I've always just assumed that that's like the fast forward parts. Is it a big segment? Is it really a third?
I'm pulling those numbers out my ass, but yeah, it certainly feels like it, and we have quite a strong female audience as well.
So you've got, so you've got story gamers with toys.
And a lot of other performers like to tune into us.
Those are the best kind of story gamers, by the way.
So other adult performers will tune in, and they're very supportive and they're very interested. I mean, people dress up in costumes and they play out little scenes in the bedroom. It's not that different. And I used to do vampire LARP. That was a fucking meat market. So, these things go together to a certain extent. And of course,
I think it's cool. I think, and I know exactly what Grim's talking about with, from sex to romance to, just people getting together and having relations. That's such a huge part of the human experience that it seems a shame not to enter it into like role-playing games at any point. So, Grim and I are kind of like on the same page with that, because I also put a lot of, whether it be eroticism or sleaze or sex or, normal tame relationships and boyfriend, girlfriend, or marriage or something like that, or even having kids. I try to include some of that in my stuff, because not only does it just seem more realistic, but it's also a combination of the two things. I love more than two things, but those two things that I love. So it seems like, a natural pairing. And if I wasn't married with children, I'd be asking like, hey, like, I want to participate. Like, have me on. Let's do this. But I gotta keep it.
So,
keep it PG-13.
In your RPG, Venger, you might have somebody, climbing a mountain or something, but that doesn't mean you grab the gear in real life and start pretending, climbing up a wall or something, right?
Well, so
this is where it gets particularly weird. Like, I'm more of a fade to black kind of guy about sex scenes in RPGs in any case, right? Because no matter what, usually, if I had a bunch of hot, amateur porn stars as my players, then that might be different, right? I can recognize that. But the gang, no offense to all of my players, but every single player I've got, I haven't. There's not any in particular that I really want to see naked, right? Like that's probably part of what maintains a healthy gaming group, right? Because on the occasions where I have had one that I wanted to see naked, it's usually been disruptive to the group, right? But I don't need to see that played out. First of all, I don't need an explicit description of a sex scene in an RPG. You're absolutely right that any RPG campaign that's not very unusual, anyone that's within the realm of realistic in some sense, is benefited by having RP about relationships, about love, about romance. If it's a long-term campaign, to have characters possibly getting married, having children, all of that stuff, right? But then, from there to having to have two players describing, what kind of devices they're using in their bondage session is a bit too much for me. I don't know if that again makes me the most prudish, inappropriate character, or whether does Ryan agree with me, or is he on the side of the somebody said the handsome pearls to college pundit?
I think that Grim, your ladies and gentlemen, I assume it's hardcore, and I've interacted with Tabletopless online, but I've not actually attended a session. Forgive me, my friend. Is it actually playing out the scene, or is it we're playing D&D and then boom, we're going to insert a hardcore bit now?
So it depends. Obviously, it is a lot easier to play out an erotic scene with a hot girl than it is Dave with a Cheeto stuck in his fat rolls.
Right, because I'm not going to do that with Dave.
Yeah. But, quite often we do just fade to black because we don't need to do more. It's more about an atmosphere than anything else. When someone tips for something sexy to happen, we try in as much as possible to incorporate that into the play. So they might have a sex break, which would count as a short rest or something, or you're trying to persuade the guard and someone tips for, I don't know, whatever, and so you act that out, and then I say, all right, well, the guard is convinced because you did whatever to him.
Doesn't take much for those guards.
You've really got to think on your feet, though, to improvise and make it flow together. But we're not necessarily, talking through a sex scene between an NPC and a player character. It's more about setting the scene. So one of the places they regularly meet up, which is their kind of adventurer hangout, is this bathhouse run by a spy mistress. And so she's usually, naked, lounging in the bath, being quite flirtatious, touching people, and it might lead to something, but we don't necessarily go on and describe that out. You don't need to.
Right.
So yeah, it's just, for me at least, it's just about incorporating these things into the world and having it make sense. Because when you look at the real world, this is what it's like. And if you look at the kind of fiction that influences people now, like Game of Thrones and so on, sex is so important in those as well. And some people are looking for that, and other people are looking to play queer half-orc bakery salesman. It's,
I mean, my Sword and Clear Band campaign is set in the Silk Road, right? I mean, you can't have a campaign set in the Silk Road that isn't going to have all kinds of harems and whorehouses and tea houses and and it's a picaresque kind of campaign, right? Like we've already had one player character. Our session, we play every second Saturday. So yesterday we finished playing, and our session ended when the gang goes to their favorite tea house in Baghdad, and the owner, this big Persian guy, is furious because he found the shirt of one of the PCs in his daughter's room. And he's going to the blood now, right? Like it's, so that sort of thing is absolutely acceptable, right? We got some comments from the chat here. L says, Tabletopless doesn't have ASMR hot tubs. Okay. Chris Miller says, it's like a Chalt live action game.
No, it's good.
I read Playboy for the articles.
Some people genuinely did. So
yeah. Let's see what else you got here. I've just jumped there big time. Chris Miller said, I played in the Rocky Horror stage show for 12 years. Most of that crowd plays D&D, and most have OnlyFans pages too. So there's definitely a crossover. Like we know that there are a lot of people in the porn industry that are also tabletop gamers, right? I mean, when I was working for Defy Media, I ended up doing an article. It was actually an article about Republican voting porn stars, right? But I got to know several because I had to interview a bunch of these people, right? And there was more than a couple of them that were gamers.
It would surprise you, I think, if you weren't familiar with the kinds of people. But yeah, it's a lot, and a lot who are just interested.
Yeah, Joe Grognard says, need some pearls to clutch Pundit. Well, I don't think it's about pearl clutching. I don't in any way disapprove. Like, if Grim Jim just had like a regular kind of like OnlyFans stuff or ran a porn channel, that I'm not the kind that judges. I'm not that kind of conservative, right? Like, and I was a hippie, well, kind of a punk hippie in the 90s. I did shit tons of drugs. And like I said, well, Venger said, I don't have any children. And I said, I don't have any children that I know of, right? But there's a very good chance based on activities I did between around, it'd be 1996 to about 2002.
Don't say that on the air.
So
you're going to be getting served next week.
That's right. Any ladies out there that are single and don't have a husband,
I actually have some futurity, Calvinize and Mia Khalifa, yeah. Let's see. L says Dungeons and Drag Queens is another show, but I don't think Grim runs that one. Oh, yeah. Okay. Actually, here's a shift over to our next topic, where Laranjeco says, speaking of prawn, Baldur's Gate 3 has a scene in a brothel with a drow couple that made me believe that Slanesh is a canonical deity in the D&D cosmology. So that's very interesting. We're going to talk about Baldur's Gate 3, which will be really interesting for me because, as you all know, I don't play any video games, but we'll see how I manage. But one more thing before Grim, you said that right now your show is on hiatus, and I understand there was like some kind of conflict or scandal or something. And but I'll out of courtesy for you as an alumnus, I will leave it to you to explain what that was, if you have any public statement to make to our audience.
I have a public statement on my YouTube channel, post-mortem video. So if you want a more detailed explanation and my point of view on everything, you can go and watch that. I've kind of decided not to talk about it anymore very much unless people ask directly, and you have. So one of the players and the producers had a falling out, which has been quite nasty. I think most of it's down to misunderstandings between the two. So it's unfortunate that player has decided to leave, and there's been some ructions around that. Unfortunately, unrelated, at the same time, one of the other players is basically deciding to move out of the adult performer space back to doing normie jobs and things. So she's leaving as well. It's just unfortunate it's all happened at the same time. So we're on hiatus while we look for some new players, and I try to figure out how to rescue the main campaign.
But you are definitely going to be back.
So far as I know, talking between me and the producers, we're going to be back. As well as being the games master, I'm going to step in to be a kind of mediator between cast and crew as well, because everyone seems to get on with me for some reason. So
you're a likable guy, right? Given especially
tell it to Twitter.
More than most people, because especially how little we have in common on some of our social and political views. The fact that you and I can get along regardless is saying a lot, right? About probably more about you than about me, because I'm not a likable personality, I think. At least not to anybody who tends to disagree with me. All right, so Baldur's Gate 3. Let's quick poll here. Have any of you three played Baldur's Gate 3?
No.
And okay, so we're going to have a conversation. We are the expert panel here, right? 4 people talking about something they know nothing about, right?
You see what this is? Look here. This is an armchair.
Yeah.
So he comes with my opinion as an armchair gamer. I play real role-playing games, but when it comes to computer games, where's the thing? Okay. I used to do that when I was young, and I just don't do that anymore, so all of my opinions are sort of theoretical, I guess.
Well, I've never even played Baldur's Gate 1, never mind Baldur's Gate 3, right?
Right.
So, but
what we're
talking about is that there's been already quite a lot of scandal, well, not scandal, but a lot of nonsense from the regular crowd about Baldur's Gate 3, right? Apparently, one of the things that Baldur's Gate does, right? Like it's set in the Forgotten Realms, right? But it's not set in the current year Forgotten Realms. Somebody forgot to tell the game developers that nowadays the Forgotten Realms is this diversity, multicultural wonderland of like gay pride parades in Waterdeep, and everybody's and everybody gets along, right? Like and they haven't done this, right? If you look at like the old earlier editions of D&D, one of the things that you had, like in the AD&D Player's Handbook, first edition, right? You had this table of like which races get along with other races and which races hate each other, right? And these guys took that to heart, right? Like, so the Baldur's Gate setting is reflective of that, where you have, elves and dwarves don't trust each other, and, they hate orcs and stuff like that. And some people immediately became outraged at this and are very upset. And there have been several articles that we've seen in the gaming news media about how Baldur's Gate 3 is racist and it's full of problematic elements, So I don't know which of these you've heard of, but I know there's been several, right? There was one. The most recent one I think that I saw was about like the hag. There's a hag in Baldur's Gate 3, and there was like all kinds of ridiculous takes from the SJWs on this. The woke have said that the hag is obviously it's offensive to women, and it's there was one that and this is like it's always such a tell that there was one that said, well, the hag's pointy nose is anti-Semitic. Okay. God. Like if you look at a hag and you say, "Oh, that's a Jew," right? that says what you are, right? It doesn't say what anyone else is. Like nobody in their right. Like I would look at that and say, "Yeah, that's a monster from myth," right? It's like the wicked woman. This is like profoundly mythological. Every culture has the ugly crone, the evil crone. There's also often a good crone, but there's the bad crone that is like a representation of kind of the feminine power gone wrong, right? The corrupted version of the feminine archetype, right? But
it's
instead,
offensive to hags, right?
That's a Jewish person. Like, what the hell?
The hag is offensive to hags, and that's why they're mad.
Well, I thought
half of the feminist population are hags. Sorry, but it's true.
Well,
they thought that stealing the children away was a reference to the blood libel as well, for some reason.
Yeah, which is ridiculous, right? It's like there's hag stories in like Korean folklore, right? There's no relation to that and the blood libel, right? The blood libel was not about like old Jewish women stealing children away, right? Like it was a whole other thing, right? It was nothing to do with that. It's just bizarre.
It's just posturing. It's 110% posturing, because the same people that are making these giant deals over the hag, you're right, they're showing their hand, because if they're seeing a Jew, it's the same thing with the people that see, orcs as black folks or goblins as Jews. I don't see that, you don't see that, but you see that. And then that's something you need to look inside of. The same people that are posturing to make all of these claims are playing the shit out of this game. That it's not slowing down. So how deep do these convictions lie? And I've seen a couple of folks, and mostly it's commentary from everyday folks on Twitter, in social media circles. It's not in the pop gaming media. But there's been a lot of folks that are saying, no, this isn't the case. This is where it's represented in the original text, which the developers were reasonably faithful to. I did play Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I won't play Baldur's Gate 3 because when I can, I don't want to give money to people that hate me. And ultimately, even though there's a separate developer, there is a license being paid to Wizards. So that's a separate issue. Otherwise, I would be playing the shit out of it. My one buddy said, I'm not going to have a choice because I'm going to buy it and send it to you. And if that's the case, then I'll report back and let you know. But these people are using it to get up on a soapbox, but it means nothing because they're still continuing to play. I literally mind, there's one particular person that was trying to ride my ass on Twitter. That never happens. And I was just scrolling through her profile, and, oh, this is horrible. This is racist. Look at this. And then 5 tweets later, maybe a day or two before, it's just praising and exalting how wonderful the game is. So if anything, it's exposing these people.
Right? It's convincing people.
Yeah, it's exposing these people and their methods. And, if anything's toxic to the hobby, it's that. At least, people might love us or hate us, but our position is our position. We're not going to hold our finger in the wind and see what we're going to say today to support politics or whatever it is that they're trying to support. I don't even understand it,
They're still voting for Trump.
Holy shit. They better ask for ID to make sure that Trump doesn't steal another election.
Some comments from our chat here. L says, Venger playing computer games. He's just happy he can turn his camera on in the car to make his Garibay up nose videos.
Give me a demonstration. D&D is the best. It's the best. Everybody that doesn't play D&D is a terrorist.
Lanjeko says, I thought that orc smut was a joke, but then I looked it up and there's a lot of women who like this thing. Well, yeah, okay, so this is an interesting point too, right? Is that to be fair, there's people on the right who are also criticizing Baldur's Gate 3 because it's got a lot of sexual elements, bringing it back to like what has been the topic so far, right? That like famously, you can get it on with a bear, apparently, in Baldur's Gate 3, right? But that's not the limit of it. It's like, apparently, like, every single NPC wants to hit on you. Like, it's really easy to get, like, that. They for some reason, chose to really emphasize that in the game, right? And apparently that bothers some of the kind of social conservatives.
I thought The Witcher did that better.
Sorry?
I thought The Witcher 3 did that better, the adult content.
Yeah, well, apparently some people are just complaining that it's like too easy to get laid in Baldur's Gate 3 or something, like.
Oh no!
Matt says Baldur's Gate 3 depicts racism. That doesn't make the game racist. That's right.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? Oh, that there's another thing that has been mentioned. The one that I found was very funny was that there's obviously for some reason the what Ryan might call sparkle trolls, when they're playing D&D, they love playing like the really weirdo races, not the conventional elf, dwarf, or whatever, but they always want to play like, a tiefling or a cat person or some shit like that, right? And they're really angry at the fact that tieflings are disliked in the setting, right? Like, and how could you dare to do that, right? Like, because they're half demons, like that's the whole thing. It's like they're saying, oh no, this is like, again, they're trying to compare it to some kind of like real world racism, right? But this isn't like, your grandfather was an Albanian or something like that. No, your grandfather was a demon, and therefore your soul contains an element of corruption. So if you weren't baptized at the moment of birth, you're damned. Like that's the mythological tradition this comes out of. The Cambion, the most famous example in Western mythology probably being Merlin, who was supposedly the son of a devil, and he was saved by having been baptized right after he was born. So like, it's just, this is also a bigger part of the problem with like 5e, right? Because we're seeing like, we've heard that in the upcoming Book of Many Things, the creators of the Deck of Many Things are being retconned to being like the most important people in D&D history or something, are this autistic female paladin and her her Medusa girlfriend, right? So like now you have like heroic Medusas, and we should like have a betting pool as to how long it's going to be until there's a D&D adventure book or something that features like a heroic mind flayer, because that's coming, right? Like their whole point is to say, well, there is no such thing as good or evil. So like if you're playing D&D and you see a beholder or a mind flayer or a demon and you immediately attack, then you're somehow a bad person, like you have to wait and see because they might be lawful good or something because nothing matters anymore.
What I find fascinating about the Baldur's Gate thing is they got the license in 2017 and they've been developing since then. And it is like this perfect little time capsule of that's a good point. Was back then. And somehow they've avoided all the bullshit since. And instead they parked back to earlier editions and earlier games in the series.
If this had come out in 2017, all these people would be saying, oh yeah, this is really, this is really progressive, and instead, only 6 years later, they're now Nazis, because of this.
But the other thing is, because it was an independent studio, they have been blissfully isolated from all of the shit that Wizards has been in the last year. So, they have this layer of insulation and a layer of isolation, and that's why you're getting this weird microcosm in the product. I don't know if we want to talk about it, but, I'm not certain that this product is going to do a lot of favors for Wizards long term too, with their potential virtual tabletop and the push to go digital everything, because you are holding up a very polished. I'm not knocking the work that went into the game. You're holding up a very, very polished Dungeons and Dragons representation, and they're going to have to compete effectively with themselves in this virtual tabletop. So that isolation, again, could be coming back to bite them in the ass over and over and over again.
I was just about to seek into that, right? Which is that, Baldur's Gate 3, you can make mods for it, right? You can have multiplayer groups or whatever. And so, like, in essence, this is going to lead to a really big question, is what's going to be the better virtual tabletop? Is it going to be whatever Wizards puts out, or is it going to be Baldur's Gate 3? And this is always the problem of the whole strategy that Hasbro and Wizards have for what they're imagining to be the future of D&D, is that they're saying, well, we want D&D's future to be online. Well, as soon as D&D's future is online, then you're suddenly not competing against, like, Steve Jackson Games or Paizo. Now you're competing against the guys that make Baldur's Gate 3, right? And so you're going to be in even a tougher spot in a way,
It's interesting. Now, Venger, you're not playing, and, I think all of us would prefer to play face-to-face. Is that a fair statement, right? Mm-hmm. I always say, online play isn't, but it's better than no play at all. So if you don't have a choice, that's where you're at. What's your reaction if someone comes to you, throws you a key to this game, says install it and let's play? Where are you at, Venge?
I would certainly try it. But I know that I wouldn't get the same enjoyment out of it that I would Okay, so it's different enough from face-to-face role-playing that's like an impediment and a reason for me not to really get that into it. But then on top of that, there's the kind of gaming that I like. And that's one of the reasons that I enjoy being a game master. Because if I'm playing in someone else's game, it's after however many years, like 35 years, something like that, almost 40 years maybe, of role playing and playing and GMing and just all the stuff that's in my head, things that I've read and watched. My version of role playing and like what I do with the Chalt game is a completely different experience than someone that's going to run like even an OSR game, even if it was like, I don't know, Dungeon Crawl Classics or Swords and Wizardry, and they have like a published adventure or maybe something that they wrote on their own. The things that I touch upon or the things that I bring out of gaming or that I like about it is almost night and day compared to just like a normal person that I would walk into their game and start playing. And so I assumed that playing something like Baldur's Gate would be like a million miles away from the kind of gaming that I do or that I like or that I prefer. So sure, I would try it just for the novelty of it, but I couldn't see myself like really getting into it or spending a lot of time on it because that's just not the kind of thing that I prefer. So if I have a choice, I'm going to do what I prefer, which isn't like, my gaming isn't like anybody else's gaming. I've had, 35 plus years to make it weird and crazy and humorous and sleazy and science fantasy and eldritch, gonzo, all that stuff. So yeah, that's why.
So Jim, you're waiting for the console version, you said?
Yeah, so I haven't played it yet, but I'm taking an interest in it, and I do play a lot of computer games. mostly on console because my PC is for work, really, and not much of anything else. So computer games scratch a different itch, I think, and I always think it's been a mistake when role-playing games have tried to imitate computer games. I think that was the big problem with 4th edition. I think it's going to be the big problem with the VTT. But I do play online with people, so I appreciate that that's an option, because I'm stuck out in the middle of fucking nowhere, the Shire, in England, without people to play with, you know? So, I appreciate the option. But yeah, the computer games are something different, I think. I'm interested as a games master to look into how they've put the game together, because a lot of the things that people are complaining about are things that I think are good and are problems that I've had with 5th edition, like encounter balancing. I know people are complaining that Baldur's Gate 3 is too difficult and that they keep dying. It's like, character die in 5th edition? What? Preposterous! How?
That doesn't happen.
So I'm curious to see how they've constructed the encounters, and maybe if I can back engineer that to figure out how to make more challenging encounters in 5th edition.
Well,
in the comments here, Langico says the problem is that the game is a commercial success, and now every other game is going to follow this pattern. You know, yeah, that's an interesting point, because I mean they're making a game that appealed to a lot of gamers, you know, and so they're, you know, this is also going to be a challenge to Wizards, because it doesn't quite fit their current mold of what they expect these games to be like, right? Like it's not something that Wizards would have ever created. Let's put it that way. Chris Miller was talking about Devil's Advocate. These 5e players actually prefer demons and devils to white males.
Cis white males.
Yeah, Tisha brought up a good point about the owlbear drop. So the thing about computer games is also that they are rules engines, right? So they can't make exceptions or change the rules if a situation is stupid or whatever else. So there's this thing in the game, apparently, where you can stack up crates, you can climb to the top, your druid can then turn into an owlbear, and you can jump off and land on monsters for obscene amounts of damage. So people will find ways to break computer games, and because they can't think creatively, you get funny things like that happen, which are hilarious, but not something you'd want in your tabletop game.
Not to mention, there's people that are openly online saying, I'm mad at Baldur's Gate 3 because I can't grind down my DM with needless sparkle troll meandering until he gives me what I want. You know, you can't bargain with the
engine. People actually admit to that?
Yes, yes.
That's fucking horrible.
They're complaining. I can't needle my DM in Baldur's Gate to give me what I want / need for my character. Yeah, it is amazing. Amazing.
Crap Phone makes a very interesting comment here. He says, sorry, with sexual content, my kids would not be allowed to play this. Wizards is going to lose future audience share from this. Well, I don't know if Wizards will, but that is an interesting point, is that, you know, like, the earlier D&D video games were something that was largely played by, you know, a lot of kids and teenagers. You know, I remember when the old, you know, Forgotten Realms video games, like I'm talking about, like in the 80s and early 90s were out, you know, and like
Hills Far
were hugely popular when I was a teenager. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of teenagers will play this anyways because their parents will be oblivious to all that content, all that part of the content, right? But it is kind of interesting that this is very clearly a game that is theoretically for an adult audience, you know, which says something about, it's something that seems to be endemic in our culture, that like all this stuff that used to be for kids, like children's cartoons and stuff like that, are really being written. I mean, largely they're being written by millennials for millennials, right? Like they're the target audience of so many of these cartoons that would have in a previous generation been kids' cartoons. They're really they're really just for adults now, like they're and not necessarily having, overtly adult content, but in that, like, it used to be that there were some really clever kids shows that had like subtext that adults would get that kids wouldn't get, but now they're like a lot of them are just directly, the everything in the scripting, the storylines, everything is like really you look at this, you go, yeah, okay, what is this made for? This isn't made for a 10-year-old. This is made for a 35-year-old.
Right. It used to be that Disney would slip in one or two jokes in an entire film. And now the whole film,
with Robin Williams, the genie. There's a few things there that the parents are going to get that the kids aren't. But like,
right.
That now it's just all done for the adults.
I think this is doing better for Wizards than the film has. Though interestingly, I just watched the film the other day. I didn't think it was bad. It wasn't fantastic, but it was a fun enough, action comedy romp. We all liked the Fat Dragon. We thought that was fun.
It was a popcorn movie, right?
Yeah, this made in a week what the movie made in months. And it's a form of interactive entertainment, which tabletop games are, and it will probably leave people wanting more. So I think that, if anything, the computer game is going to bring people to the tabletop. And then they're going to run into all these crazy people and flee screaming into the night.
Well, that's the thing. Is it going to bring the right people to the tabletop? And this is where I take shit because I say gatekeeping is good. Gatekeeping is good if you look at it as vetting. And it's going to bring a lot of undesirable folks to the tabletop that are going to be expecting the same experience that they had with Baldur's Gate. It's the same thing that happened with the Critical Role crowd. They came in and they expected every DM everywhere to be Matt Mercer. Well, I'm sorry, we're not all subpar voice actors with a cast of voice actors. And the game is very different. It's not pseudo-scripted. It's not this. It's not that. They're going to have the same thing coming in with this perfectly polished AAA video game that has a development team that is not just pages, but pages upon pages upon pages of names that contributed to this game. And they're going to be sitting around a table with 4 to 7 old grognards and wondering what the hell is going on, and is it going to do more damage in the long run? That's where I worry, because there's been damage done from our Sparkle Troll friends, right?
I can see why that would be a concern, and it probably will be true for some of them. But I think a computer game is, and one that has been set up in what 5th edition was at the start, I think that's more likely to bring in good people who are primed for something closer to what the tabletop has to offer.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So
we all got upstaged because there's Meatball.
Yeah. Sure, the historian says that Baldur's Gate 3 has already sold 5 million units, which is, I take it, quite good for a video game.
Yeah, that's just on Steam, I think.
It's probably more than that in the others. Yeah, there's other places you can get it.
And how many of those people bought Schultz? 3. 3! Not cool, bro. Not cool.
Corey Simmerock says, are there safety tools in Baldur's Gate 3? I understand it's quite important that everyone play D&D with safety tools now.
No, but there's fudge dice rolls turned on by default. Oops.
Well, it says you can turn off the adult content in Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, I didn't know that. But again, I'm guessing people just aren't going to tell their parents about that bit, so it doesn't really matter. The question is, if you've got, I don't know, a 12-year-old who wants it, parents might need to know this. I don't know. Let's see. Safety words, says Surly Unicorn. Yeah. Rob Necronomicon says, I have no doubt that Baldur's Gate 3 will bring a load of new players into TTRPG, but that's fine because it's going to be WotC 5th Edition's problem and not really a problem for the OSR. or old school gamers. Yeah, well, curiously, this was always a part of Cynthia Williams's plan, right? Books are not part of the plan. The plan is movies, which were a flop, merchandising, video games, and the virtual tabletop. And so I think the assumption of the video games part of that.
What's wrong? This could be over when it's over. Just go. I don't know. 8:15. That's when. Go. What? What? That doesn't make any sense. Hey, yeah, let me mute this.
What was I saying? Oh, yeah. I think that Cynthia Williams had the notion that the video games would draw people to the virtual tabletop, which in a sense, you can kind of understand that strategy because it's like suggesting that you could have somebody who might not go and play a game in person, but is like a hardcore video gamer, would find the online virtual tabletop to be more accessible. But I'm wondering if it's not going to go like the other way, that people that might have gone to the virtual tabletop are just going to play Baldur's Gate instead,
I think they probably will. It's more polished and it's on rails, And for someone coming from a video game background, that's what they're used to. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, I've brain farted what I was going to say anyway.
My fault. Oh, what else is I don't even think we need to go into the bear. The bear's been done ad nauseum.
I remembered what I was going to say.
Okay.
So, the other thing I think has been particularly notable is, this game is huge, and Wizards have basically got fuck all to tie in with it.
Yeah,
nothing to go with it. They made more effort for the movie, which didn't do particularly well. Like I say, it was okay. It was pretty good.
That's so typical of Wizards, though, isn't it? Like they never get the right moment of opportunity. They're always behind the game.
Yeah, I mean, Descent into Avernus is the supplement they put out ages ago, which was to do with Baldur's Gate. It's rubbish. And I think they rushed out some quick PDF thing to do with Baldur's Gate, and that's all I've seen that they've done. It's just a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, they should have been all over this. Coming out of Gen Con, going into Gen Con, and they did that whole big Creators Expo, or whatever the fuck they called it. Baldur's Gate should have been their showpiece. They had the perfect opportunity to align their Dungeons and Dragons product with this game that, again, everybody forgot it was being developed for 5 years. Oops, there's these people. Oh, look, we've got a 500 million unit.
Yeah.
It's not like they didn't have advance warning of this, right. It's been going on since 2017,
They've been paying those salaries for a long time. Where's this check going? Oh, it's going to those guys in that office over there. What are they doing?
All right, so I guess we should go into the shilling section of the live stream here. And while we're doing this, if people have, I forgot to mention this before, but if people have questions for Grim Jim about him, his gaming and stuff, and his show or whatever. Please feel free to add that in, and we'll try to get to it. So Ryan, I don't know who's you've got queued up first for the shilling.
Neither do I. So let's see who we got. Hey, Venger, you are up. Sell your goods.
We'll turn the light on so we get. There we go. We're light. Jeez. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is VengerCon 3, Revenge of the OSR. That just got officially released this morning. I put up the graphics that I had one of my artists do, and it looks fantastic. It's me. There you go. And the logo, VengerCon 3, Revenge of the OSR, Reject Modernity, Embrace Tradition. And just talking about like the dates. So it's next July, Friday the 19th, July 19th to Sunday, July 21st. So 2024. It's right on the border between Madison, Wisconsin and Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. And, it's just going to be 3 days of awesome gaming. The last 2 conventions were kick-ass, and this one's going to be at an even nicer, newer, and more spacious hotel and just venue in general. So I encourage everybody to grab a badge, because it's 100 maximum people. And when we reach 100 attendees, then that's the limit. We're cutting it off. So, you should, get on that. You can find it on, Tabletop Experience, or just go to Venger's Old School Gaming blog, and then you'll see the link. What else? Crimson Dragon Slayer D20 is going to be updated. It's going to be a significant update, and that's coming soon. Depends on when the layout guy has time to do it, so sometime in the next couple weeks. And all this talk about X cards, I thought someone made a comment like, "Oh, you should do like a rated X card for your Chult game, or whatever, to make it more awesome." I'm like, that's a great idea. So I came up with these little cards.
Which we can't see.
You got, post-apocalypse, and then there's the Corthalis meta sigil on the back. And you got, science fantasy, and whatever, this humor. So all the whole 7 things. So my idea behind this is, they're just kind of like in front of everybody at the table. And then if in the middle, or maybe the beginning or end of a scene or random encounter or some bit of RPG business, and they're like, you know what? I want this to be more gonzo. So instead of holding up an X card saying like, you should stay away from this kind of thing, or I don't want to go further, they flash this thing, and then I immediately try my best to make it more gonzo, or make it more sleazy. So, that's kind of my idea. Of course, the pop culture references as well. I'm going to try these out, Saturday at the next game. And, we'll see. I mean, I think it'll be cool. I think it will have the opposite effect of the X cards. It's going to make the game, more eldritch, more gonzo and sleazy, and, weird and pop culture references. So I'm excited about that. And I think that's it for me.
Those cards are awesome, Venger. So it's kind of like Tabletopless, only it's not, hey, let's do a blowjobs.
Right. Everything is in the imagination.
We got a super chat. I want to thank T-Shirted Historian in Tabletopless. The audience, hey, look at that. Nice segue.
Yeah.
The audience does participate with the experience. I've written characters and storylines for the games at my own cost to include in sessions. We do watch these for the stories too. So
yeah.
T-shirt?
Like I said, and people have put in NPCs and contributed all kinds of stuff. So it does interact with the audience on other levels as well.
Makes sense. Well, Jim, I guess that was a good reason for you to go on the shill, my friend.
Okay. Where do you want me to start?
Since I get to pick, apparently, I'm super interested in Penny Tower. So talk to us about Penny Tower.
So, as you know, I've had various health issues recently, which means I haven't put out as much work as I would normally. So guys over at the Red Room, who I helped kind of get their start in publishing, they said, hey, why don't you write something for us? So I'm writing a J.G. Ballard inspired setting for Wretched New Flesh, which is their kind of cyberpunkish setting. In this, there is a sort of prototype arcology that was built in a fictional suburb of London in the 1970s, and then something went wrong. Nobody's been able to contact anyone in there since the 1970s. Most authorities and so on seem to have forgotten all about it. And it's this weird, twisted knot in time and space that your characters will then go in to explore. So it's kind of part high-rise, part concrete island, with a little bit of weird 1970s British TV mixed in, like Sapphire and Steel and things like that. So
that's really clever, actually, because, I mean, if you know history, in the late 60s and in the 70s, there were all these projects of, like, a lot of these were now council flats and towers and stuff, but there were a few that were, like, these really weird experimental architectural and like, social design concepts, almost all of which ended up going horribly, horribly wrong. So it's, I'm sure that you're tapping into that little bit of British history in this product. Huh?
Yeah, the few surviving brutalist buildings, I don't think are that bad, and they've done things to them in the years since that humanize them. There's this great one that looks like a sort of reclining stack of shelves in London, but it's got all these kind of terraced gardens all the way down. So it looks like in the summer, it looks like a waterfall of green coming down. And it's a fantastic piece of architecture.
I just have no soul because I love art brutes. So.
I love those old Soviet war memorials and things in that kind of style. They're brilliant. So Whitechester, we talked about before. That was my massive city crawl, 500-page monster of a book. In that, I had rules conversions for 5th edition, Lamentations, or any other OSR game, Morkborg, and so on. I hadn't done Dungeon Crawl Classics, so this is a little supplementary book that converts every single monster from Whitechester for Dungeon Crawl Classics. So you can get Whitechester and you can get this little book alongside, and then you'll be able to play it with DCC. And what's great about Whitechester is that it has a kind of built-in funnel. So if you want to use that from DCC, you can just generate a whole bunch of 0-level characters. They all get convicted for being criminals of some kind. They get funneled into Whitechester. Probably a whole bunch of them die, and then you can, take the survivors as your characters. So that's a great way to go in.
Good stuff. Pundit, you're up on the block.
All right. Well, my current latest product is still Wilderlands, a source book for Sword and Caravan. It's been kind of funny because it sold really well on both on drive-thru and on Amazon. Where on Amazon it was for a while on the hot new titles list for the D&D category, which I thought was interesting. But it's specifically a source book for Sword and Caravan. It says so on the cover, right? It's not like but it's not like Social Encounters, which you can really use in any OSR game. It is, it's just an expansion of encounter tables and stuff for wilderness areas around the Silk Road, and it's got a couple of other things, in it, like Eastern dragons and rules for generating families and inheritances for the cultures of the Silk Road. But I've had a few people on Amazon that were giving it a bad review because they said, "Oh, this book, you can't use it unless you have Sword and Caravan." I'm like, well, it's it says so there, right? But anyway, so if you picked up Wilderlands, and if you haven't,
on the cover, by the way,
yeah, if you haven't, and you have Sword and Caravan, I strongly recommend that you check out Wilderlands. And if you haven't got Sword and Caravan, I strongly recommend you check out Sword and Caravan. But if you have done this, if you've already bought the game, I'd be very grateful whether you bought it on Amazon or on drive-thru that you give it a rating and maybe a review if you have time, because that sort of thing always helps. And then I've got some news for upcoming product. I have already been sent, and I posted on my YouTube channel in my community posts on YouTube, which I've been using a lot lately. So you should check all of those out. I posted the cover of the upcoming Heroes and Villains of the Silk Road, and that's going to be a 125-page book that has biographies and stats for all of the NPCs that are mentioned, which are all basically historic characters that are mentioned in Sword and Caravan, so you've got all the greats there, like Saladin and Richard Lionheart and Genghis Khan and then like some much lesser known but remarkable figures of history like Bohemond One-Eyed or William the Crazed, to say nothing of Inak Khatun, who was sort of like the Empress Livia of the Silk Road. And it's got, an expansion of like the chronology and timeline with cues for things that player characters can do relating to historical events along the chronology of the Silk Road. And it also includes the assassin class because everybody demanded it, and some more incredible technological marvels of the Song Empire. But, the book is I think it's going to be really good. And I put the cover up on my YouTube post. It's an amazing cover. All of this is thanks to Chris Miller from Mad Scribe Games, who's the publisher. And you're going to want to check that out when you get it. It's going to be very useful for anyone who's running a game on the Silk Road or who's running a game in a similar kind of setting and wants to pick out NPC characters that are going to be like just all really remarkable. But it's also a kind of a history book, like if you want to read some incredible biographies of remarkable historical figures, it's a good book to get too. So stay tuned. It should be out sometime, well, let's say within the next month, right? Because you never know with publishing, but it'll probably be out before the month is up. I guess that's it for now, but check out all my other products too. You can always, if you go on any of my YouTube videos and in the description, you'll see links to all of my different products. And I'm always grateful to everyone who picks them up.
Speaking of Chris Miller, Chris, $20 super chat. Thank you so very, very much. I've been banned by thousands just for knowing you guys, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks for all that you do to make our hobby better. Thank you, Chris. We got another super chat that rolled in. Our good friend, Diversity and Dragons. Great show, fellas. Best of luck to you in all your endeavors and in your health, Jim. So, Double D giving you some good juju. Remember, after today's show, to head on over to Diversity and Dragons on YouTube for the after party, Inappropriate Characters after party, streaming directly after we go off the air here. So, I think it's going to be a good time. Double D, we'll see you later. Save a rum and coke for me.
I'm going to go buy my ticket right now.
I think we get comped in.
Yeah.
I think we're on the list. So,
it'll be after Venger's bedtime. So
that is true.
I do have to go in a minute, so I will say thanks everybody right now, and everybody watching at home. Thanks for being in our audience and watching us and following along and supporting us in our bad habits.
All right, Venger, go get your beauty rest, my friend.
I will.
Venger.
We're throwing the sleep X-rated card out right now for Venger.
But I'm just going to pull a random card, and we'll see what it'll be. This will be the next topic of your conversation.
Sleaze? But it's my shill time. Sleaze!
I'm only sad I won't be here to make it more sleazy. That's my fault. My bad.
Good night, my friend.
See you guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.
All right.
Do you have anything to shill, or?
I have very little to show right now. I guess, want to take this opportunity to remind everybody that if you like or hate the things that I say, I do use my mouth quite a bit in all the wrong ways. I have an audio podcast, and we just started a live stream about 2 months ago. A lot of Inappropriate Characters friends that are new friends to us have popped in, and I couldn't be more proud and honored and humbled to have you guys pop in on those streams and listening to Nerdcognito. Just a reminder, if you don't know where to get it, you can get it just about everywhere that you can get a podcast. So most of you are listening on Apple or Spotify, but the big granddaddy audio show, it is audio only. Nerdcognito drops every Tuesday. Make sure that you're subscribed on the podcast provider of your choice. And if you want to see this ugly mug on Saturdays, check us out. We're streaming on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, and Rumble for the Nerdcognito Saturday Speakeasy, which is an open format. We don't have a format. It is just us guys and friends of us guys getting together and talking about nerdy stuff for a little bit. And that's Saturdays at 5 Eastern, again, on X and Rumble. So no YouTube competition. Other than that, I'm really, really humbled by the Inappropriate Characters fans that have come over and are now part of our community. And it sounds so cliche, but it's one big nerdy family, and I couldn't be happier. So check us out if you're not. Make sure you're subscribed to the audio show. That's the big one. And it's great. You can listen to it in your car, at the gym, when you're out for a walk, do whatever it is that you need to do. So, with that being said, my shills are easy and quick.
All right, we got some comments here from the live chat. L says, Chris Cox is touting how successful Baldur's Gate 3 is while reporting $125 million loss for the D&D movie, I assume. And what else have we got? T.S. Stone says, gorgeous books. All the Sword and Caravan books are just so damn pretty. Yeah, that's all thanks to Chris Miller. Because I have nothing to do with the design of the books. I just write it.
Certainly likes the Sword and Caravan art, too. So, double props to Chris.
L says, Chris, I take it the basic Mexican will not have an article in Mad Scribe in the next issue. Well, I don't know about that. I guess you'd have to ask Chris. Chris Miller says the basic Mexican, and L says Chris Juan Torres. He hates Pundit. Yeah, well, he wants to make money off Pundit is what it is. But anyway.
L asks, would it be inappropriate if I offered something for Ryan's mouth? You have to get in line behind your mom, L. I'm sorry.
Where was somebody else had posted? Here. Joku said, great to see Jim back. Do hope you become 4 Musketeers only with bigger swords. Well, I think that the format of Inappropriate Characters is always a 3-host format, but both Jim and Job are welcome to come and visit anytime they like. The alumni of the show are always welcome. And eventually, when Ryan is replaced by someone, he'll be welcome to visit anytime he likes to.
I'll piss you off soon enough. Don't worry.
It does seem to be the pattern here is that it's me, Venger, and then a rotating third host.
I can only manage one late night.
We'll see how you do. Sir the Unicorn says, I enjoy Pundit's writing in Sword and Caravan just as much as the artwork. Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm glad to hear it.
Well, we got these other things lined up, Pundit. I don't know if you want to talk about them or not.
Go ahead.
We talked about the X-rated card. This is one that we kicked around and we weren't sure, and it's Ginny wishes she had D's. Our dear friend Ginny D. But you know what? I think I'm okay. You could always veto me because, you got the final say on this one. But I'm okay just to sort of let it die. Our friend Diversity and Dragons did a good piece on Ginny D, and we can't top that. So
I don't think we could top his his take on it, but it.
I think it's interesting though that we talked about earlier how that particular segment of fans really shows just how dedicated, or in this case, not dedicated to the hobby they are. They're dedicated to what it is their presence, right? Their image, their brand, that sort of thing. And Ginny is no exception, right? She is one that will produce content, and very good content. Girlfriend is making the money. Good for her, but she'll produce content that she knows is going to get clicks and be controversial with folks outside of her sphere. Because, let's face it, when she says something absolutely freaking ridiculous, we watch. It's the Jerry Springer effect. It's a train wreck. We have to watch. So, I'm not saying she's not smart. I'm saying she is genius when it comes to her brand, but very, very skinny when it comes to the hobby. And I think that is detrimental because we've talked about it many times. We have to put ourselves aside, sometimes even at the expense of profit, to make sure that what we love still is around, right? And I don't know, Jim, you saw this whole train wreck that once again was spawned out of safety tools. So we're not talking anything new. It was, what's the controversy carousel gonna land on this week? It was safety tools. Yeah. Ginny D says, everybody, if you don't use them, even if you don't need them, you need to use them, and if you don't, go fuck yourself. That's a pretty bold statement. That's a pretty Inappropriate Characters-esque statement. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah, it's the OGGM's Wheel of Irrelevance, isn't it? That he calls it when these topics come back up. I felt that there was at least a slight positive side to this recent blow-up, because she admitted that not everybody who hates safety tools is Hitler.
But still go fuck yourself. Don't forget
Still
that.
go fuck yourself. But she admitted that there might be other reasons why people reject them. I did my response video to it. Anyone who's followed me for any length of time knows my objections to safety tools probably by heart at this point. But I thought that was at least promising. Not quite an olive branch, maybe an olive twig, maybe a tub of olive spread. But it was something.
Way. I see it as a backhanded compliment.
Relentlessly positive fellow. That's the thing.
What do you think, Pundit? We're split.
I couldn't give a two-penny fuck about Ginny D. I don't really care about the opinion of anyone who's only been a role player for 6 months and then gets their own YouTube channel. But I will recognize that you're quite right, Ryan, that... Oh, look, it's Meatball. You're quite right, Ryan, that she's definitely figured out the exact formula. And it is formulaic. Like, there's no mystery to why she's successful. She's got the right... style, and then besides that, she has tits, right? So like this is the thing, right? Like it's one thing if you're a middle-aged guy doing a channel, right? Then you have to really worry about your brand, right? And
I've
yet
got
you do
tits.
And she's, she does all the right things, like you said, right? She plays to a certain audience that's going to be simping for her, and then she also intentionally courts controversy with people that aren't going to like her anyways, but that will then rally the simps around her to white knight for her, right? And she knows that when she does this, when she gets attacked by someone, that just helps her, right? I mean, it's apart from the simping part, it's the similar strategy that you see other channels use, right? Like, I mean, when the Basic Expert did his video about how horrible it is that I keep talking about him when he's actually the one talking about me, he said, I don't want to even talk about the pun anymore. So he does a video about it, and he gets 3 times the average views of his typical videos on it, right? Then he knew that he would, because it's me, right? Because I'm the goddamn RPG pundit, right? So by making a video about it, he triples his viewers. And she does exactly the same tactic. She knows that when she brings up safety tools, she's poking at the wasp's nest, and that will instantly get her own people to come rally around her. But you're playing on easy mode in nerd culture. For starters, if you're a girl, right, you could be a 4 out of 10 and you're still going to have an advantage, right? But besides that, she does it just right, because she's not playing on any, like, she's not doing Grim Jim show or something like that. She's not playing on overt sexuality. She's just there, and she's a girl, and she expresses that certain type of feminine quality. Like she's like the nerd girl, the cute nerd girl character from a movie, right? Like she's playing a part. She's playing a role. And it's the role that she knows that nerdy boys want. It's that girl that these nerds, when they were in high school or college, thought that if they're sufficiently nice to her, they might get a and that's what she's tapping into, that part of their subconsciousness.
She's in the professional friend zone. Holy fuck, she's in the professional friend zone.
Professional friend zoner, exactly. That's a very good insight. Yeah. And so that's why she's successful. But otherwise, she's, in terms of having anything useful to say, there's nothing there, right? She's not, she doesn't have the experience to say anything useful. It's like, Jordan Peterson always used to say, when one of his students is saying, would say to him, in college, oh, you're not taking me seriously or something. He's like, of course not. You're 18 years old, right? There's nothing about you that's serious yet. You haven't had time to be serious, and this is the same thing, people can complain about her, but I think that frankly, I've never done a video about her because it's not worth paying attention to. Though Diversity and Dragons expose, let's say, was really very good. Diversity and Dragons here commented. He said it was so easy. She did all the work for me. Yeah.
But you had to watch it, Double D. That's fucking torture, man.
Yeah, you did the work so others wouldn't have to. That's something that often comes up for me too. Joe Grognard says she should try cosplaying as an actual DM before she tells us how to do it. Yeah. I mean, the great one is when she's talking about having to put all this dramatic elements into her game and planning for the game, and then her next video is that she's burnt out as a DM. Her game collapsed. It's like, oh, what a surprise!
Well, she's not burnt out cashing the checks, and that is really, when you line up everything the way that, and again, Double D, tip of the hat to you for doing all of the legwork on that one. When you line up everything that she's done and look at it from a top-down view, you can really see the grind. I don't want to call it the grift, because it's not a grift, I think. She's not making any presuppositions that it's something that she's not. She's out there. She's shilling products. She's taking sponsorship. She's, selling whatever it is that comes across her plate. She's a great pitch woman, right? And she
I guess it depends if you define grift as playing off of lonely nerds' fantasies or something like that. But I would say that's more of a kind of mutually unhealthy parasitic relationship than a grift.
So it's a market segment meeting its product.
Yeah, exactly. Crap Phone says Ginny's approach is like Friends. The character is the content. That's also a very good insight.
Well, we got a couple of questions that came in, and I think after that, if nobody has anything else, we can look at the exit for this evening. First up, Elle has a question. Bless you, Jim. It's to you. With the interest in relations in Baldur's Gate 3, have you thought of updating gore content for 5e using the SRD for the new audience that Larian is courting?
I have thought about doing a 5th edition conversion or something for the Korean setting, but there's so many games out there that have been written for 5e, which 5e doesn't suit at all, whatsoever. And it would be an attempt to cash in. And I don't think the 5th edition audience would appreciate the material. In any case, I just don't think it's right for them. I don't think it's right in terms of system. I don't think it's right in terms of the audience. So it would be a money grab if I did it, and then even then, I'm not sure it would grab very much money. Something like Savage Worlds would be a better fit for Gore, or even Ledifius's 2D20 system if they licensed that out properly. But neither of those get licensed out properly. There's too many terms and conditions and so on applied. So neither of those are likely. My experience on Whitechester with its multiple conversions and thing has been there's not that much of a market for that. It's nice to do to have things be accessible for players, but I think I'd be kind of betraying the source material if I did it. But I might still do it to see if it gets more money, which I could then invest in, hiring freelancers to produce more material to keep it going. I hope that answers that.
Fair enough. You're popular tonight, Grim. Question for Grim. Will there be anything new for Agents of Swing anytime soon?
I am one guy. I can only do so many things, and my capacity to do things is diminished, and I'm also a controlling bastard who doesn't like other people writing things for his games. So it's a kind of horrible combination. There might be a 2nd edition, but I don't know when.
Fair enough. That's as honest as it can get. Pundit, here's one for you from Noi. What do you think of people trying to expand the term OSR to mean anything that is old school or has an old school feel? Does OSR have to mean based on D&D rules?
Okay, so there is obviously old school games, meaning like the original games from the 70s and 80s, right? And any game published in that period is an old school game by definition. That's purely a chronological position. But the OSR, the old school Renaissance, is a design school. And that design school is based around the core mechanics of old school D&D. Now, you can have other old school revival movements. So, for example, Traveller has an old school revival movement. And in a way, Call of Cthulhu does too, because there are like these other... I just recently reviewed from A Tideless Sea, which is a source book for Raiders of R'lyeh, and those are based on a Cthulhu-compatible Creative Commons rule set. And so that's like an OSR of Call of Cthulhu. But I say technically because Call of Cthulhu has never really stopped being in print, right? So it's like you could say it's just a Creative Commons of the current product. But anyways, the point is you can make other similar to the OSR design movements of recreations of old rule sets. But to me, OSR is specifically a recreation of the D&D rules. And that whole deal of old school feel, obviously there are things that create an old school feel and things that don't. But the problem with that is that often that's used as a cover by publishers who just want to tap into this is a shill, right? Where you want to tap into the OSR market. You've made some game that has no relation to D&D whatsoever or to any old school game, but you want to call it OSR because you're going to sell more copies if you do. That's one of the appeals of the OSR. It's also one of the problems that the OSR faces of people trying to kind of get in the bandwagon that are actually going to be willing to play by the design rules of the OSR, right? So So one of the features of the OSR is compatibility, right? That you can roughly take any of the OSR games and take stuff from other products that are also OSR, and they're going to work together. So if your game can't do that without conversion, right? If you've got like some kind of weird dice pool game and kind of calling that OSR, or even, just a game where like the stats are all different, and so like it's not actually, it wouldn't actually be plug and play compatible with say something from Lamentations of the Flame Princess or something from Sword and Wizardry or whatever, then that's not OSR. The compatibility is kind of the test, right? So a game derived from the Traveller rules, like Cephas Engine or whatever, is certainly an old school revival movement, but it's not the OSR as in the D&D revival movement, because you can't just take something from a Cephas Engine product and run it in Labyrinth Lord without having to do conversion. You also missed, Ryan, a question from Joe Grognard for Grim Jim there.
I've got him queued up. We've got it. We'll take Joe's. Question for Jim. Why did you... Shut up, Joe. Jim, go ahead.
So before this stream, we were playing in T-Shirted Historians post-apocalyptic game, and we were trying to break into this compound, and there's these giant mutants who are kind of like the super mutants in Fallout in a lot of ways. And we needed a way to get in, and they'd cleared a huge space, so there was no cover. So the only thought I had to try and spare Dr. Jones, who was otherwise dead set on just charging the door with grenades, was, what if we use one of these dead super mutants, hollow it out a bit, tie your wrist to it, and you can crawl along inside the body shell, and it looked like he's crawling for help. It didn't work.
Here's one from Chris Miller for Jim. I'm laughing because I was listening to that. So, what is the best version of D&D, and why is it a D&D?
I'm not a D&D guy. It's not where I started. So D&D does not have that special place in my heart that it has for so many other people. I think my favorite was probably 3rd edition because it was the closest to a proper RPG.
Jace has a question for all of us. That could take forever. What is your definition of story games versus RPGs? Pundit, Reader's Digest version.
Me? Jesus, I'm the worst one to ask.
I know, that's why we started there.
You ready for a 4-hour live stream? No, let's put it very simply. In a story game, people are working, either the DM alone or the group as a whole is trying to create a story out of the session intentionally. And what that means is therefore that the setting itself is only the backdrop for this story, for this fiction that they're trying to create. And the universe itself is completely malleable to whatever the literary needs are of creating that story. So you're not actually playing in a virtual world at all. You're not engaging in immersion. You're not practicing emulation. All that you're doing is a collective storytelling activity that has rules in the way. Because that's generally the thing, right? Like that's always the problem with story games is that you're probably better off just saying, well, everybody can take turns to tell part of the story, and then you've created a story, right? Like you don't need mechanics for that, Whereas an RPG has nothing to do with creating a story. It's about creating a virtual world, going into it, and in that world there are events that happen, and your characters, you're embodying characters that are meant to be real people in a real virtual world and that live through these events. So it's a completely different perspective, right? One is a meta perspective, the other one is a perspective of immersion into the virtual universe.
I'm going to piggyback off of that because I think that you're right on the money. And for me, the division is, could this story be told with different names, different faces, and different characters? And if the answer is yes, then it's a story game. And if the answer is no, because the individual characters that are making up the story, like there are games that tell stories that still are role-playing games, right? But if
as a byproduct,
possibly as a byproduct, but if you can't freely, or if you can freely exchange the moving parts and still have a story end product, then that's what clearly defines it as a story game, and that's sort of where I fall. Jim?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately, actually. I've been doing a lot of reviews on my channel, and I've got a project on my streaming channel, Grim Streams, where I'm trying to play everything in my bookcase that I've never played before.
Good luck.
Doing one-shot games, one after another. Yeah, I'm buying them at a faster rate than I'm playing them, unfortunately. So what I've noticed is, I'd say I fall between two stools on this. I like narrative elements. I like traditional roleplay. But I find that pure story games annoy the piss out of me. I really don't enjoy playing them. And I've been trying to figure out why. I've been reading and rereading Fiasco and Apocalypse World and its derivatives, which I've never liked. Right? I'm trying to figure out why. And what I think it is that lack of immersion. In a normal role-playing game, you inhabit your character, you make your decisions in the world, the rules moderate your interactions with the world and determine what happens. But you are playing the part of the character within the world. In story games, there always seems to be this kind of step back from that. So you're not really playing the character, you are playing yourself as a storyteller, taking part in a writer's room, putting something together. So you lose that sense of immersion, which to me is the pinnacle of role-playing achievement. What you want to do is you want to really inhabit that character and make the decisions as that character and feel the things the character does that are removed, obviously. And these story games just don't do that. You don't play the character. And that's what takes me out of it and makes me not enjoy it.
Fair enough. Last question of the night. I think we got them all, and if there's one that we didn't, then my apologies to you, but this one's from Charles Anderson. Does GM burnout actually exist, or is it just that there's something wrong with the game that the GM does not or refuses to see, and doesn't want to play that way anymore? I'll keep talking. I think that burnout exists as in whole, right? When I was coming out of one of my marriages through a divorce, I was burned out on human interaction in general. And everything suffered. Not just my game. My games went on hiatus, right? I stopped. And it was a long stop. It was the biggest stop of it was almost a year where I just couldn't adult, right? But I don't think it was attributed specifically to the game that I burned out on. I was just burned out on dealing with human beings, and I was more interested in, once again, being free and chasing tail than I was in running my games. I can see how that applies to people in a swath of different scenarios, but I don't see it happening exclusively to a good gamer. If you are a gamer and you love to play, you're not going to get burned out doing the thing that you love. If you're getting burned out doing the thing that you love, newsflash, you don't love it. So that's sort of where I fall on it. There are other mitigating circumstances that can impact it, but I still came back, and I loved it even more coming back and realized that I missed it and realized, what have I been doing? So that's where I'm at. Pundit, GM burnout, does it really exist?
Well, I mean, obviously, campaigns can fall apart for a number of reasons, and that can be because the DM has problems in their personal life or has, gets sick or things like that. Groups can become unstable because people move or leave or quit or whatever. And all of those are things that can burn out a game. But what we're talking about when we say GM burnout here, I presume, is that it's a thing where the DM is so overwhelmed by the game that he can't go on, right? Which is the kind of the Ginny D burnout, right? And I think if you're DMing badly, then probably that can be a problem, right? I think it's a problem that happens to not story gamers, but rather storyteller DMs, right? That want to have these sophisticated plot lines, and then they have to like carry through the game by their skill as an author or script writer or whatever. And that makes it potentially overwhelming when they're confronted with the necessity to like plot all of this in advance, and also when the players don't necessarily do what the DM expects them to do, right? And so that can happen. It can also, I think theoretically it can happen maybe if somebody's got has a very complex world where there's been a lot of stuff that is kind of piled on in terms of the either on the mechanical side with certain games, like I don't know, if everybody's got a Dominion and you've developed some like really, or are using a system with some really complicated rules for Dominion building, and then you have to manage it. There's all this like bookkeeping that has to be done or something. I could see someone getting burnt out by that, but like this idea of like, oh, I'm just overwhelmed, a lot of it is because of bad choices that a person has made in terms of either the system they're using or the way that they're trying to run the game. In my games, like my Sword and Caravan game, I pointed this out in a couple of my videos now, like it requires almost zero effort on my part. And, my players are they're saying, oh, this session was just amazing, the things that we did. And it was, all this unexpected stuff. And it was like really interesting and everything. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, great. But, don't praise me because I had no idea what we were going to do either. I'm using the generators that are in Sword and Caravan, the random table generators and things like that, to determine what takes place and then running off of that. So I'm ad-libbing based on the results of what's already set up in the context of the campaign book, to stimulate the living world. And so some really cool stuff ends up happening, but I didn't plan for that. I didn't meticulously write out a scenario where those things are going to happen, right? So under a circumstance like that, it makes it so easy to not burn out because you're actually also, another thing that could cause burnout is like a DM could just become bored with the campaign that they had in mind. And if you already know everything that you've planned for the campaign, that makes it more likely that you could end up feeling like, okay, well, I'm done with this, right? I'm not interested anymore in what I designed. But if you don't know what's going to happen next in the campaign, then you're in the same position as the players in terms of novelty, and that makes a big difference.
Jim?
I think I agree with pretty much all of what both of you said. Yeah, I'm the forever GM. I think probably we all are to an extent. And so if I was going to burn out, I would have burnt out by now. There were times in the past where I was running a complicated LARP game for over 100 people twice a month, dealing with their downtimes the rest of the month and playing different games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the weekends. And that was the time of my life, really. I often feel like I'm going to burn out. I feel tired. I don't want to do the game tonight, maybe. But if I force myself to do it, I end up having a good time anyway. And I usually come away from it feeling recharged, more than exhausted. Even if I think it's been a bad game, the players usually seem to have had a good time, and that buoys me up. I think it's more like writer's block, or at least to me, I see parallels to writer's block. You can either sit there staring at the page and not do anything, or you can force through and write stuff that you know is going to be flat, and then you can come back and edit it later, and odds are it's going to be better than you think it was. So, yeah, I think powering through is probably the best solution to it.
I think Ironcaster had a good point that piggybacks with what we all said. People that work too hard on the session, for as far as prep go, don't learn to ease up on the amount that they need, and it's true. I look historically over decades of running games, and my most memorable sessions were the ones that I went in with almost nothing. Right? It just happens, and that's one of the things that we love about the game. All right, we are
smoking, which is a sign that it's time to end the show. I am currently smoking. What is this? This is Super Vulcan, I think, by Cornell and Deal, and I'm smoking it in a Rattray's Meerschaum inlaid pipe, which is quite tasty. And okay, thank you very much to Grim Jim for coming on to the show as our guest, and we hope we'll see you again sometime soon. And also, everybody who's watching, remember, you can jump from here to Diversity and Dragons, and I'm guessing in a few minutes they're going to start their after party live stream there, so be sure to check it out. I'm not being paid to say this, it's just I thought it was a really cool idea. It's very clever of Diversity and Dragons, right? So you might get a whole bunch of imports from us, but it's also a
brilliant Ginny D marketing strategy.
It's an interesting strategy, actually. I like it, and I mean it means that there can be a whole other section, like it's like kind of like what Bill Maher does at the end of his show, where he does a video segment for people who want the post show, so check it out over there. I'll probably be popping in, so we'll see you then. And before you guys go, our next show, if all goes as planned, ought to be, I believe, on the 24th of September. Yeah. So that's 4 weeks from now. Yeah. So Sunday, the 24th of September, mark your calendar. If we change for some reason, we'll let it know. And I guess that's it, guys. So we'll see you guys over on Diversity and Dragons channel.
Peace, everybody.
It is just wildly inappropriate. And yet, I'm really glad you're here.
Your actions were totally inappropriate.
For some reason, he felt that it was inappropriate.
Look into the camera and say something inappropriate.
You don't get personal. That is totally inappropriate behavior.
How inappropriate!
What exactly about my methods are inappropriate?
He tweeted some inappropriate things.
That's a little inappropriate, don't you think?
At what point is it inappropriate?
No, inappropriate. Inappropriate. Stop it right now.
Toby, that is unbelievably inappropriate.
You're vulgar. You're inappropriate.
That's just grossly inappropriate.
Wow, you are so inappropriate.
It's such an inappropriate description.
Inappropriate, but precise.
Do you know what's inappropriate?
It's completely inappropriate. Why?
That's inappropriate. That's inexcusable.
Inappropriate things.
Be totally inappropriate.
Inappropriately so.
How very inappropriate. Thank you.
Inappropriate.
It's wildly inappropriate. This is incredibly inappropriate.
This is highly inappropriate.
Okay, this is inappropriate. Grossly inappropriate.
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 Inappropriate.